Welcome to NCBA's Cattlemen's Call podcast with host Lane Nordland.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another conversation here on the Cattlemen's Call podcast. I'm Lane Nordland, and today's conversation, well, it's coming to you from Washington, D.C. That's where we are wrapping up the 2023 Young Cattlemen's Conference. I'm not a participant in this year's event. I went back in 2016, and for those of you that have been on this trip before, you know it is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, 9 to 10 days learning about every single aspect of the beef industry, but it can wear a person out, that's for sure. And as we start today's program, we just would like to thank our friends at Dell for sponsoring the Cattlemen's Call podcast. And, you know, no matter where work takes you, our partner Dell Technologies, it's here to provide you with the best tech solutions for your business. And they have a wide variety of offerings from ruggedized laptops that are able to withstand extreme heat, cold force, and water that you can bring out onto the field or pasture, all the way to the back-end server solutions where you can store all of your operations data. NCBA members can save an extra 5 to 10% today by visiting www.dell.com/NCBA. As I mentioned, YCC 2023 is wrapping up here in our nation's capital, and joining us here today is Jake Fettis from the state of Montana. He is the chairman of this year's YCC. That means he went on a previous YCC and was elected by his peers to help lead the charge on this year's event. And also joining us from North Dakota, Calli Thorne joins us. Calli, how are things going today?
Good. It's a little different out here in D.C., but we've been having a great time.
And Jake, this is round number 2. You went initially in 2019, and then the world kind of stopped that next year for a while. And so you've actually been the longest serving chair of YCC for quite some time.
Yeah, going on 4 years. I don't think anybody will ever beat me.
Well, I hope we don't have another pandemic or anything like that to shut us down. But I will say we have quite a lot of smoke out here as we record this. I don't know if I'm going to get on my flight tonight because everything looks to be delayed. We're used to the smoke in the West with our catastrophic wildfires, and it's interesting to see what the reaction from the media and from the city dwellers on having the smoke out here. I hope everyone that has health concerns stays healthy and takes the precautions they need. But this is maybe an opportunity for farmers and ranchers and livestock producers who live with this every single year, but also play a role in managing their forests and helping prevent catastrophic wildfires. It's a tough word to say there. You know, it could be a great opportunity to have those conversations. But speaking of conversations, you know, you see a lot in this trip. And for our listeners that aren't familiar with YCC, Jake, just give us a quick glimpse of what it is, a quick overview, but then we can talk more about the tour itself.
Yeah, so YCC is it's a trip that's put in place to teach the cow-calf guy, the feeder, the packing industry, to take them through every sector of the industry and learn about it, because in this industry we have to have each sector. If we don't work together, we don't have an industry. If we don't have packers, we don't have feeders. If we don't have feeders, we don't have cow-calf guys, and vice versa. So it really opens people's eyes that are stuck in one sector of the industry as to how the rest of the industry works, and it truly is an eye-opening experience for everybody that goes on it.
And I want to ask you about your favorite parts and some things that you thought, you know what, I never even thought of that. But Calli, could you just talk about your family operation back there in North Dakota and just give us a glimpse of what it's like to be in the livestock industry?
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually fourth generation on our family's operation. We've been predominantly cow-calf operation, probably up until about my husband showed up. Then we added on a feedlot, so we've got a backgrounding feedlot, run some yearlings. It just kind of varies in our industry what we're up to at any given time. We started selling beef during COVID as well, too. But then I do some work with the John Maxwell team, a lot of personal, professional leadership development, which is a lot of fun, whether it's working with women in ag or running some masterminds or giving some keynote talks. So fun to be out here for the week, though.
Well, again, it's a long week, and I know everybody's ready to get home at this point. But Jake, I know you've been on the podcast a few times with us talking about your family operation, your guys' meat shop, and then, of course, you're on probably one of the first podcasts we ever did, actually, for Cattlemen's Call. But for our listeners that are new or returning that just need a refresher, let's talk about your family's Black Angus. Are you guys Black Angus producers out there, Jake?
Come on, Lane, you know better. We have the right color Angus. We raise registered red Angus right outside of Manhattan, Montana. I'm fourth generation there as well. July 1st of 2020, we purchased a small local processor and have been processing local beef. Started a retail store, gotten into some restaurants. And then I also work as an independent representative for Superior Livestock as well, and I market cattle mainly.
How's the sale going today?
I haven't even had time to look at the sale because we've been meeting with senators all morning and talking about industry issues.
The fear of panic is in his eyes now.
I would assume the sale's going quite well, looking at the markets the last week or so. So mainly I market our bull customers' calves, but that's grown into other producers as well. And then I also sit on the board of livestock in Helena, which is new since our last podcast. And we oversee everything that goes on in the livestock industry in the state of Montana.
Well, thanks for that glimpse into your guys' lives and whatnot. And it's great to be a part of family operations. I think that's what makes the livestock industry or the farming sector really work and really creates that true transparency for consumers out there when they can meet a family operation, which that's most operations. 90+% are family operations out across the countryside. And as we look at this week, these 9 days, again, we all have our certain sectors that we've grown up in that we know, or we have issues that impact us, endangered species issues, water issues, and whatnot. Well, our friends in the Southeast or the Northwest or the Southwest or maybe are going through something similar but entirely different in terms of policy and just challenges that arise. So, these 9 days truly can change a person's perception and trajectory within the industry. I guess, let's just talk about those days. I know you gave a quick overview, but Calli, what was it like when you guys just started out in Denver, and maybe walk us through that awkward phase of just meeting people?
Yeah, I have to laugh because my daughter is gone for 2 days on a 4-H trip, and I think there's 4 of them from our hometown going, so she knows them, and she's like, well, I'm a little nervous. I said, yes, me too. I am heading out with 70 plus other people, and I don't know a single one of them, and we're venturing across the United States. And so we started off in the Denver office, which was fun, getting an overview of them and what they do, and a lot of information was provided there. Geez, Jake, you're probably going to have to help me out too, where all we went. So we started off there, and then we did a lot of traveling, headed to Nebraska, and we were able to do some touring. What did we do there?
Well, we went to, first in Denver, we went to Greeley,
Yep.
to the Five Rivers feedlot,
That's
where
what I
they
was
feed
thinking.
100,000 head capacity, and kind of got to go through their feeding operation there, and then stopped at Greeley Hat Works, where they fed us, and we learned about making cowboy hats. And then we flew from Denver to Lincoln, Nebraska, and drove up to, we flew into Omaha. Wow, this week. Wow.
This is why I have the schedule in front
Yeah.
of me. Maybe I should actually use it.
We flew into Omaha and drove to Lincoln, and there we met with the Nebraska Cattlemen and had a nice little dinner with them, kind of learned about some issues that they're working through with taxes, which are a huge deal in Nebraska, property taxes. And then we spent the night in Lincoln and went to the Dakota City Tyson plant, which is the largest beef processing plant in the world, and got a great tour there and got to go through the whole plant and really see start to finish, see the live animals being dropped off and cases of meat going out the back end. Most people in our industry never get the opportunity to see that.
Well, and I had been to a plant before when I was in college. It was a smaller scaled one, but still very eye-opening. And I think if producers ever get the opportunity to go through something like that, it's very eye-opening. I mean, to be standing up there, and at one point I asked our guy, how many people right here below us are cutting meat right now, and he said there's 1,000 on the floor right now. And so being able to see that, like you said, from the beginning to the end right there, and knowing it's the world's largest beef processing plant was pretty incredible. So yeah, after that, now that I'm following my list, we headed to certified Angus beef, and I had heard that that is always quite the stop, and they definitely pull out the red
And that's
carpet.
in Ohio, is that correct?
Yes,
Yep.
yep. And so they had lots of gifts sitting out for us. They had drinks even right away when we pulled in there.
Yeah, they had Bloody Marys, a nice Bloody Mary bar with beef sticks and schmacon and bacon and all kinds of things, and they really rolled out the red carpet for us. It was, on the 2 years I've been on this stop, that was probably the one stop where they truly treated us like they just rolled the red carpet out, like we were royalty. They were so excited to have us there and show us what they do, because that is a huge sector and a huge marketing part of our industry, even if they only accept the wrong color Angus. That is a huge portion of the marketing. You go to almost any country in the world and you show a CAB sign and people know what it is, and they know it's going to be good. And so what CAB has done, not only for the Black Angus breed and producers, but beef consumption worldwide, is just phenomenal. So that stop really stuck with me after being on it twice. This was the first year that we went there, and I'm going to suggest that they keep going there.
Well, in just the training they provided, their staff was phenomenal and really gave us a lot of educational, hands-on experiences. And yeah, that was a very good stop to swing into.
And then Wendy's, was that on there too?
Yeah, we went to the Wendy's headquarters. We didn't have a lot of time there because from there we had to drive back to Columbus and fly to DC. So we had a couple hours at Wendy's, and it was a good stop too. They're a huge buyer of North American ground beef, fresh, never frozen. So they're not importing it from overseas somewhere, and so that was a really good stop, and to kind of hear some of their concerns with the industry and animal welfare and different things that they're getting pushed on them that eventually as an industry we're going to have to start to think about and consider. So to have that heads up from them and some time here now to think about it and put these great minds together and figure out how to solve some of these issues is really valuable as an industry.
And we got Frosties there.
Oh,
Can't forget
good.
that.
Yep,
We walked
Frosties.
in and they had chocolate or strawberry Frosties for us.
Wendy's Frosties are my hangover cure, the chocolate ones. I
should have
use one of
brought you
those
one.
today. Hopefully the big boss isn't listening to this right now. He'd be like, oh, send that kid back to the ranch. But that's so interesting. I guess what were some differences? I know on your last stop, you stopped at the new Chicago headquarters of McDonald's back in 2019. I guess what was that like, just seeing two of the biggest fast food chains personally that are such a big seller of beef?
Probably the biggest difference that I noticed is Wendy's serves, and they put it in every ad, fresh, never frozen North American beef. That being said, they do get some beef from Canada and Mexico, but it is most of it's from the U.S. Just because of traceability, they can't say that. That was one of my questions I asked them, was if we can get traceability put into place and you can trace those animals back, what would that do to your market share in the industry if you can say this is 100% U.S. beef? And they're very interested. That is something they are super interested in. Traceability was one thing they talked about a lot, just from their supply chain standpoint. Whereas McDonald's, the quarter pounders are all fresh, never frozen American beef, but any Big Macs, any of the smaller patties, those are not 100% American beef. Those could come from anywhere.
Yep.
So that was, just the marketing on Wendy's side to push that product was super interesting to hear about.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and just to hear logistically how they get that fresh beef and stuff, right? And what did they say? Didn't somebody ask about why the square burgers, and what'd they say? Because we don't cut quarters.
We don't cut corners.
Oh, I thought she said quarters, and I was
Nope.
thinking like quarter pounders. And
Nope, we don't cut corners because they don't cut the corners off. It's not round.
that's why you've got them square.
It probably ships better too.
I would guess there's multiple reasons for.
Well, it's never froze though either,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that wouldn't be a concern.
But it
I don't
was super interesting. I think they said they go through 280 million pounds of ground beef a year.
Ugh.
And so I tried to get them to tell us how many patties that was, but nobody could. No, sorry, I think it was 28 million pounds. Anyway, it was a huge number.
This is why you never say numbers on podcasts.
Yeah,
No.
never say numbers. But it was
We're
an
not playing cribbage
astronomical,
or anything, you know. We'd be like, oh,
astronomical amount of beef, which
Well,
was cool.
Well, that's cool, and especially as you can say, you know, the traceability conversation is big in the industry. There's a lot of questions that producers have, and I don't want to get into the politics of it here on this podcast, but it's just interesting to hear that from a big buyer of the product that we raise as well. And so then you went from Ohio here to D.C. You flew into Baltimore probably and bust in. What's it been like flying Southwest Airlines the last few days? I've only flown it once, and that was on my YCC trip. But how's that been?
So yeah, ask the North Dakotan, right, who had never flown Southwest until this trip. And so they're like, well, we have to go line up now. And I thought that was my seat number,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we have to like get a seat and get in there and make sure we have room for our luggage. And I said, I'm not quite understanding how this works. So that was eye-opening for sure, that it's just free for all.
It's always like you just bought a bunch of pears or something from, you know, somebody, and you don't know how they're going to like work through your chute or something. And it's just like some just file in, others are like, nope, I'm not going. Then you get the ones that charge ahead and, you know, run through the tub a little faster. That's how I feel when I flew Southwestern. And, you know, I mean, 70 plus people on that. I mean, that was quite the section that probably was on that plane. What were the thoughts of the people that were not a part of the group on that plane? Did you have any interactions, or probably just some odd looks?
We got a lot of odd looks. Pretty much everybody asked us if we were from Texas. That question has gotten quite old on this trip because it's everywhere we've gone. They wear cowboy hats in places other than Texas. But no, we had some great interactions and conversations with some of the other people on our flights. Some of them looked at us funny. Some of them thought we were hilarious. Some of them thought we were really dumb. One of our flights, the pilot got on and he said, welcome to all the farmers and ranchers, and went on a little bit of a rant about how much he likes eating beef and American beef, and that was not prompted at all. So it was pretty cool to see somebody notice what we do and thank us for what we do to supply food to the country. So that was pretty neat.
And then I joined you all up on the up near Capitol Hill at the Capitol Hill Club. You got a lot of training. Obviously, attendees get to learn about every aspect of the industry and the policy aspect of advocating for cattlemen and women out here in Washington, D.C. The NCBA team was a big part of yesterday's training. I guess, what was that like, you know, being up on the Hill and getting ready for your Hill visits today?
I think one of the things that's been most interesting, I mean, especially yesterday when we were preparing for our visits today, but even when we were flying or when we were on the buses traveling, was just hearing from the other states, you know, getting a bigger picture. I know what's going on in North Dakota, but man, it varies in the southeast or compared to even the west. And so hearing what they plan to talk to their congressional leaders about versus what I have to cover with mine. And, you know, it's unique in every state. And I think that's what was fun for me is in North Dakota, we're all buddies and they're pretty much on our side and they understand it and have a pretty good view of it. But some of the others, I maybe would have been a little more nervous to be going to visit with their guys. You know, I mean, just knowing how much they have to provide information and help them understand what's going on in the beef industry.
And then also, our smaller states, you don't have to hit as many offices either, which is good and bad. But,
and then we talk about our family and who knows who and all of that. So it's been fun today so far.
And yesterday, too, just being able to learn how to really be concise in talking with whether you're in your state capital or here in D.C., because sometimes you won't be talking to your senator or your congressperson just because they're busy. You're going to be talking with staff, and sometimes it's better to have a better relationship with that staffer than because you can have that almost instant access through email and text and phones. But I guess, what was that like having actual Hill staffers come in as well and just kind of share, you know, this is what it's like. Let's do some mock conversations, because just like all of us, we're very passionate about what we do, but it's so important just to be concise, to the point, and make sure everybody's time is being utilized.
Yeah, I think as ranchers, we're pretty used to going to the coffee shop and just having a very long-winded conversation. When you get in front of a staffer or a member of Congress or the Senate, you've got a very short amount of time. So being concise, being quick, getting your point across, but then also telling your story so you can tie it back to something back to Montana. Because if I just go tell them, well, I'm not happy with the cattle market, they hear that all day long. But if you can relate it back to why you're not happy with the cattle market and what how that's having an effect on your operation, and that goes for anything, not just the markets, but really driving your point home as quickly as you can and relating it back to you, your family, your neighbors. That's what they're going to remember when they're sitting in their office at some point. And then, they might have a staffer reach out to you, and you get that continued dialogue. It's not just a one-time thing when you come up here. This is a pretty special opportunity to be able to represent, and these people will remember you. And when they have questions or issues come up and need some input, they'll call you to get that input, because they don't have the time to go figure it out themselves. So, building those relationships, like you say, with the staffer, and being able to shoot them a text or give them a call and just say, hey, this is coming up, we need some help with it, makes a huge difference within the industry. And it's not something that, Calli travels a lot, but a lot of us in this industry don't get to do that. We don't have those opportunities. We're at home working. And so if we can get that quick phone call, quick text to a staffer, that can make a big difference when they're arguing a bill on the House floor or the Senate floor, or talking to some rural senators or congressmen, or talking to some urban senators or congressmen, and making them understand why we do what we do, how we do it, and why it's important.
Well, I do want to continue our conversation and ask you both, why you took the time to participate here. But again, a big shout out to Dell Technologies for sponsoring the Cattlemen's Call podcast and partnering with cattle producers across the nation. And as we mentioned earlier, that no matter where work takes you, because we know that on our operations, it can take you anywhere. Our partner at Dell is here to provide you with the best tech solutions for your business. And they have that wide variety of offerings, from those ruggedized laptops that are able to withstand extreme heat, cold, force, and water that you can bring out on the field, to the back-end server solutions where you can store all of your company's data. NCBA members can save an extra 5 to 10% today by visiting Dell.com/NCBA, and that 5 to 10%, that goes a long way, and all of our operations are getting more advanced, and it's good to have that good technology. So big shout out to Dell for helping support producers out in the countryside. Also supporting producers, specifically the Young Cattlemen's Conference, we do want to give a big shout out to the Young Cattlemen's Conference sponsors for this year, and they include Five Rivers Cattle Feeding, Corteva Agriscience, Elanco, John Deere, and Farm Credit. We could not do this trip without you, so big shout out to those YCC sponsors. Getting back to our conversation here, Calli, I remember the first time I met you. I was flying out. My wife and I were flying out of cattle convention one year, and you and your husband. It was early in the morning too, and it had to have been like either Arizona or like Texas somewhere, something like that. One of those.
We weren't flying Southwest.
No, I was, but it was early. It was one of those early flights, and I'd had a long week of just TV and radio and at cattle convention, and Calli comes in. Hi, I'm Calli, and I'm just like, hey, nice to. I think I still have your card too. I was going through my Rolodex the other day, but
we sound like we're like 80 now.
I've always joked that I've been a 60-year-old man since I was 12, so I'm probably pushing up on that 80 mark about now. But being able to just go out and advocate and learn, that's one thing. And the older I get, we always learn. When you're young, you're like, I want to get out of here and there, and I'm like, God, I wish I would have paid a little more attention in that animal science class, and not back in college. But what drove you to say, you know what, I've heard of this trip, I know people have been on it, it's a big investment to be gone that long. I guess what sparked your interest in attending YCC?
I think you probably hit the nail on the head there somewhat, because I had heard about this trip and what an experience it was. And if I'm being honest, I had called our executive director, Julie Ellingson, so I was selected in 2019, kind of like we talked, and was supposed to go in 2020, and now it's 2023, and I finally get to go. And I had talked to Julie, and I called her and said, this was probably about a month and a half ago, and I said, Julie, talk me off the ledge here. I don't think I can go. And it's just the time, and I missed our branding, and it's our county fair next week, which kids have 4-H steers. And so, like everybody else on the trip, there's 10,000 things that are going on. I mean, we all have reasons that we can't go, but I try to think, okay, why should I go? And I just kept playing in the back of my head, like, this is an opportunity of a lifetime to go make these connections, see these places, and kind of like you said, to be a lifelong learner and experience these things that you would never otherwise get the chance to do. And so I think that was the big thing. And it's, I don't know, I always say, right, those who show up have a voice, or to keep learning and be educated in what is our own industry. I think sometimes we think we know what's going on, or we hear what's going on with the talk and the chatter and stuff, but actually showing up and experiencing it yourself is a completely different thing. So I had the chance to talk to Julie the other day, and I told her, I said, by the way, thanks for talking me off the ledge. I'm glad I went. It was worth it.
And I guess, how do you think this is going to help in all your public speaking engagements and the outreach that you do? I guess just a few more, obviously, tools in the toolbox, being able to see so many different aspects and meet so many people. I guess, how is that going to change your delivery and topics you talk about?
I think it just gives you a wealth of like a broader view, right? I think, and maybe Jake touched on this, where it's like we can have this almost tunnel vision. Like, maybe we really know cow-calf sector, and that's my message, or how I describe it to people if I'm giving a talk or something. But now I have this almost global view, right, of our industry and what actually happens here and how things happen. And plus, it gives me the opportunity to hear from other people. What's a challenge? What's hard for them on their operation? And how can maybe some of my training or something like that help them out, when it gives you not that tunnel vision, right? We've got a bird's eye view after a week like this, and made a lot of connections along the way too.
And Jake, obviously, you really had a big campaign back in 2019 to become chairman. I mean, you had stickers and pins, and I want to be chairman.
That's what it took for him to get in, I'm sure.
Obviously, your peers select you, and they say, you know what, this guy was great on this trip, and it's obviously a chairman comes in to help guide, since they've been through the ropes before. But like you said, you've done this for 4 years, technically 4 years, because you've had to go to the conventions and sit in that chairmanship as well, and everything like that. I mean, you've traveled a lot. This has been a big commitment for you and your family as well, from 2019 here to 2023. But I guess, what did you gain the most out of it? Just other than just know that you're getting old and can't hang anymore. That's how I feel. But how do you feel? What do you think you gained professionally? How did it make you a better cattle producer?
Oh, I think getting that, like Calli said, getting that bird's eye view of the entire industry. I sit up in Montana. On the Board of Livestock, we deal with depredation every month. We have to see the numbers, and I hear about grizzly bears, I hear about wolves, I get phone calls on it. And then I sit down with the guys from Louisiana and Mississippi, and they're talking about the black-headed vultures eating their calves and killing their cows, and I'm like, wait, what? What's a black-headed vulture? And these things are killing hundreds of cattle across the southeast and killing calves nonstop. So I think things like that, being able to see all the different problems in the industry across the entire country, it just gives you, a bigger view, again, a bird's eye view of what's going on and how do we solve this. And yes, they might be dealing with a different species, but we're dealing with the same Endangered Species Act, and how do we all work together to pull back regulation, to pull back government overreach, to let our operations move forward to the next generations, and then helping producers in Montana realize, because typically when they sell their calves, we shut the trailer door, they never think about it again. And then they hear, oh, the big bad packers and all this, but then I get to be able to sit down and have a conversation with them and talk to them. No, we need the Packers. You know, our leverage is changing now to where we're going to be in the driver's seat for the next 3 or 4 years. And nobody's going to be complaining about the Packers. But we need to help those producers understand that, you know, they have to have their time to make money. We have to have our time to make money. And then talking about exports, imports, you know, we've got meat coming in from Paraguay and Brazil right now that have both had foot and mouth disease cases. And if you're not on this trip, if you don't make these connections, you never see those things. And you can never advocate for them. The other great thing about this trip is they teach you how to advocate. They teach you how to talk to people, how to present issues and make it, you know, somebody from Bozeman's concern that I have this concern in our industry because they want to eat steak.
Yeah.
They want to keep our industry alive, whether they know it or not. And without us there to educate them and do some advocacy instead of advocacy, they won't know. So if we can bring it to the masses and get people from the urban areas on our side as well to help fight for us because they want to continue to eat American beef, you know, I think that's huge. So just what you learn, I would advise anybody that can apply to apply. It is open application, and just get on here and learn about the industry and learn how to go out and advocate and how to lobby with your senators, whether it's state or federally.
And we do joke about this because it's called Young Cattlemen's Conference, but there's producers from their 20s up into their 50s.
65.
65, okay. Missouri, is it?
Yeah.
Or, yeah, yep. But no matter what age you're in, how important is it though? And Jake, I've watched you the amount of leadership roles that you've been stepping into since you even went on YCC a few years ago, is impressive. But how important is it for folks to step up into these leadership roles at the county stockman's level, at the state, at the national, and have the conversations with your family, your friends, your employees about, you know what, for us to be successful, we have to have a future for the industry. I guess I'll ask both of you the same question. Why is it so important for folks to step up and serve in these leadership roles, no matter how big of the operation they have?
That's actually what I was just going through my head as he was talking about that, because I think I'm constantly reminded of, we can all talk, right? But unless you show up to the table, your voice doesn't really go anywhere. And so whether that's from starting at school boards or any of those local things, and the opportunity that it gives you, or being a member of an association, is when you show up, then your voice does get heard, and it might not always sway your way or whatever, but I think it gives you that opportunity to at least have the conversation, right? Then you hear all the different perspectives and can have conversation with other people and hopefully gain some of that understanding. But that's the big thing, is to have a foot in the door. Is you have to be willing to show up to these things. And like Jake was saying, though, the leadership opportunities in a lot of these, it's limitless.
Well, and I think, you know, it's kind of a funny little saying with the industry we're in, because we put meat on the table. But I heard this last time I was on this trip, and it rings so true for me. But if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And there's a lot of organizations that don't want us to continue doing what we're doing. And if we're not at the table talking about it, defending ourselves, you know, and promoting ourselves, honestly, then we're behind the 8 ball already. They teach you how to be a leader. They want you to be a leader. And we are having a harder and harder time, not just in this industry, but society in general, getting people to volunteer and participate. I mean, we fight it in our church. We fight it on the school board. Just getting people to want to participate is huge. But, you know, in this industry especially, we don't have time to participate, or we don't have time, we tell ourselves, when we do. And we need to make the time. And so getting involved is what's going to continue to allow us to operate and hand our operations down.
Well, and it's about leaving a legacy. And, you know, you mentioned that. It's just like growing up. My grandpa belonged to the Eagles Club, the Elks Club. They volunteered. They didn't expect anything out of it because you just volunteered to help your communities. And you look at that now, just what these fraternal organizations that support communities, support children's health. And it's just like, and I look at myself, I'm like, I never even have considered becoming a Mason to become a Shriner, you know? And I love seeing the little Shriner cars at all the parades back home. We have the Ooga Patrol, and they got their little Model Ts. But that's startling to see that these groups that support our small, medium, large size communities, and it's no different for farmers and ranchers. We are a shrinking population, less than 2% nationwide, and there's a lot of infighting and whatnot. But I always think, how do we leave a legacy? What is the legacy I'm going to leave for my kids? Obviously, I joke I'm a broke rancher that talks for a living, but that's what I have to do to make sure my daughter, we only have one, can enjoy her cows and go out on her horses at 2 years old and be mad when we have to come back in. That's a pretty cool legacy that we're starting to build there. But that's the question: is how do we leave a legacy? Well, we got to work together. And I guess what's one thing you would just want to say to the folks back home or anything like that about your experience here, or the folks that encourage you to go on this? I know you thank the crew already back in North Dakota, but I guess maybe some words of advice for folks that are maybe on the fence about doing this or any type of leadership activity.
I think it's really some priceless opportunities, especially this one. Right, like I said, I about walked away from it and turned it down, and I'm thankful I showed up. And I think I've had a lot of opportunities like that in life, right? You never know what's going to come of it, or who you're going to meet on the trip, or the impact that you're going to have. And I think a big piece of that is being willing to step outside your comfort zone and trying some of those things, because going back to if you want to have a voice or you want to get involved, or whether it's growing yourself or growing in your community or state and beyond, I think you have to show up to those things, because everybody talks, right? Everybody will complain about something or say what they would do if they were in that position, but then are they willing to show up? And whether it's having the conversations or running for something specific on the board or whatever it might be. And that's a game changer. I think about in college, the opportunities I had to travel and things like that. And I feel like that's where I learned that, right? Being willing to apply yourself and show up, and the experiences you can have are pretty unique and rare compared to if you just sit back and watch everybody else do it.
Yeah, and I would echo everything Kelly said. And, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. This is a trip that less than 1% of the cattle industry ever gets to go on. And to see that bird's eye view just gives you a whole different perspective on your operation and your neighbor's operation and your local operation. When we look at NCBA as a whole, there is not another organization in the country that fights for the cattle industry like they do, from every sector, and we need to support them. It's the average age of the rancher is 65 years old, I believe. Is that?
And it's probably gone up, I would assume.
It's probably gone up. So we're going to have a whole generation that's going to be getting out of it before long. And if we don't get involved now, when we're in our 20s, 30s, 40s, all of a sudden we're going to be 65 and getting out of it, and don't have the knowledge to fight for our industry. And you look at all the issues that we learned about in Denver and then here in DC, that I would say 99.9% of cattle producers nationwide have no idea are even going on, whether that's WOTUS, ESA, the BLM conservation rule they just passed that's going to drastically change our western half of the U.S. These are things that are going on here that we don't know about. And that's good that we don't know about it. That means our lobbyists in Washington, D.C. are doing their job, because it hasn't made the news because they're getting it shut down, or they're working on it before it makes it to the media. But we need to get involved in that, because these people that are in this organization are getting older. And this younger generation has got to move up and start taking a leadership role, or we're going to get stuck at some point with people that are getting out, and we don't have the tools in our toolbox to do it.
Well, I was going to bring up, we look at the age of an average producer, and, we're going to see some expensive bred cows this fall. I mean, I could see 28 over $3,000 for bred cows. Knock on wood, that'd be great for people. But that also means there could be a lot of producers that are saying, you know what, that's the highest this cow market has ever been. I just sold calves at one of the highest prices ever. You know what, I think it's a good time to retire. And that's troubling too. I'm not criticizing anyone that's worked their tail off to run cows and raise good beef and be a steward of their land. But when that majority of producers is in that retirement age and they're like, you know what, I got grandkids here, or, my kids don't want to come back, and you know what, I can go team rope in Arizona all winter now and not have to worry about it, or we'll run some yearlings. So that's scary to think about, because what happens to that land?
Well, and I think there's another side to that coin too, is if pairs are costing that much, a young person can't get into the business either. I mean, the land is already in most parts of the country cost prohibitive, but if you could find a lease, you could afford to buy some cows, some pairs, bred heifers, whatever. And prices are going to get to the point the next couple of years where that's going to become very difficult, on top of inflation and increased interest rates. It's going to become almost impossible to get started. So not only what does that do to the generation that's retiring, but who's getting going? Who's going to take it over?
It's a lot harder to buy cows on shares when they're that expensive too, because why would you do that when,
Well, and it's interesting you bring it up, because I talked with one of our leaders just this morning here about that I'm usually a pretty glasses half full person, but that's what we talked a little bit about was, the numbers are as low as they are right now for the people that are in this cattle business, but what's it look like in 10, 20, 50 years? And I think, even that's where a lot of my work ties in, is, are we having this conversation right now? Whether it's with your family in the business and what that looks like, or are you talking to your neighbors? What are they going to do? Who's going to come back and stuff? And that, I think it makes it full circle to this leadership stuff. And I've done a talk recently, and that's what it's on leading 360 degrees in agriculture. And it's like, that starts with us, number one, with me, and that impacts my family, our ranching operation, my community, and then this beef industry as a whole. And if I'm not leading myself, or if I'm not willing to have conversations with people, what's it going to look like down the road?
Yep. Well, I think that could be our next podcast that we do, because it's troubling. But again, being able to participate in leadership and personal development programs like the Young Cattlemen's Conference, and attending your local stock growers meeting, or whatever group you might want to be a part of. If you don't have a local stock growers, maybe it's Farm Bureau or something like that, but just to be active and don't. Sometimes that can be a little frustrating, because you show up and they make you chairman or appoint you to a committee right away, even at the local level. But you know what? It's about, again, like I mentioned earlier, leaving a legacy, and exciting seeing the 70-plus people that have been waiting to go on this trip for a few years and have it be a true success. And again, hopefully everyone gets back safe. This smoke that we were talking about earlier, I was looking at my flight, and I hope I can get home tonight. I'm ready to get back to Montana. But I tell you what, it's been a great conversation with Jake Fettis and Calli Thorne. Thank you both for joining us here today.
Thanks, Lane.
Thank you for having us.
Well, that will do it for today, and a big shout out again to our friends at Dell for their sponsorship of the Cattlemen's Call podcast. I'm Lane Nordlund. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to NCBA's Cattlemen's Call podcast with Lane Nordlund. For more information, visit ncba.org and make sure to subscribe to the podcast today.